Tuvok, I understand you are a Vulcan man. You have just gone without for 7 years about. Barris, please find a way to load a hyperspray. I will give you the sign, just aim for his behind. Hormones are raging, synapses blazing. It's all so very illogical. Thank you very much.
Oh, very good, Mike. Yay, let's everyone give him a round of applause. That's a good job.
A little echo of future Trek.
Yeah, future.
Yes, Voyager future. But it begins here.
Hey,
Gene Roddenberry apparently thought to himself, hey, do the Vulcans have sex? That'll be an episode.
Well, actually, it wasn't actually him. It was actually Theodore Sturgeon. How about that? Preeminent science fiction writer. Yeah, science fiction horror.
Famous.
Anyway, everyone, welcome to Yelling at Gaseous Anomalies. I'm, again, your captain, Matthew Ross, and I'm accompanied by my very singing XO, Mike Pontone. How are we doing tonight, Mike? I assume you are in a good mood with this episode.
Not bad. Yeah, nothing to complain about. I'm happy that we're into season 2 already. I mean, we're going to get into it, but we're on the next phase. We're on phase 2, not quite, of Star Trek with my captain, Matt Ross. I am his XO, Michael Pontone. And here we go.
Yep.
Amok Time. Not Time Amok.
Yes, Amok Time. This is actually this is the first episode shown in season 2. Just to do a quick aside on this, Star Trek was kind of on the edge, and it wasn't because of ratings or so forth. In season 1, it was always number 2. A lot of times it was number 1 in the ratings and so forth. NBC just did not like Gene Roddenberry. They also didn't like spending a lot of money. Desilu was running out of cash. They were always behind the 8 ball. Lucy was trying to think of how could she make money. She was contemplating and eventually did sell her studio to an investment group, which later became Paramount. But right over here, after a letter-writing campaign and thousands of letters to NBC, over 54,000 letters coming in saying, how dare you cancel Star Trek, when that actually never was on the table, NBC finally renewed it, basically saying, oh, okay already. Interestingly, Roddenberry was behind the campaign to have Star Trek renewed. And also, you have a whole bunch of writers who are interested in having Star Trek renewed. I bet you can't guess a certain writer who wrote City on the Edge of Forever wanted it renewed too. Can you believe that? Who am I talking?
Harlan Ellison, really?
He really helped fight to have the episode renewed after all the bad blood that was between the parties. But yep.
That's fascinating. I never thought Harlan Ellison would care about anything.
Yeah, well, he cares about himself. You know that. So that's what he did.
R.I.P.
But anyway, here we are. Episode 1 of season 2, or episode 1 that's shown, Amok Time. This is the one where Spock gets married, or as I joked in our top 5, bottom 5, which everyone should listen to from season 1, does he get married? What's the story here? I will read to you, though, if you'd like. There's 2 sets of information in this. There's the NBC press release, which is written more bombastically, and the TV guide version. So if you don't mind, XO, I'm going to read you pieces of both. All right?
Yes, please, Captain. Yep.
Okay, this is for the September 9th, 1967 episode of Star Trek's Amok Time. NBC says, in all caps, Mr. Spock's strange malady on planet Vulcan forces him into combat with Captain Kirk, our first Star Trek of 1967. The strange illness, bizarre Vulcan custom presided over by T'Pau, by Celia Lovsky, forces Captain James Kirk and Mr. Spock into deadly combat against each other in Amok Time. And I said it loudly because it's all written in caps. Then
I see.
Then you get to TV Guide, and it says, Amok Time. The Enterprise begins its second year in space with a visit to Mr. Spock's native planet. Obeying an ancient Vulcan marriage rite, the science officer engages in mortal combat with his fiancée chosen champion, Captain Kirk. Script by Theodore Sturgeon. Clearly,
well,
the TV
they
Guide
sterilized that last one. They were like, well, we can't make any reference to Spock going crazy with horniness.
Yeah, that's quite true. There's even some letters at the end, which we could come to, that were written in that addresses Spock's horniness. But I actually like the way this opens up, with McCoy talking to Kirk going, hey, you got a minute? And it shows a working starship. You know, Kirk's like, yeah, I got a minute. What is it? I'm not at your beck and call, Doctor. I got things to do. And there are other people in the hallway, which is also kind of nice. It's not just empty corridors. And
Well, yeah, wait, we when we see Kirk, he's climbing up a ladder.
Yeah.
What the heck's up with that?
well, you know,
Was the turbo lift broken?
no, the Enterprise has ladders. It has ladders on every ship, and even TNG, the Enterprise, has ladders, and even the Defiant has ladders as well. The access to engineering, not every, they have manual controls and so forth, but that's more of a design choice to make it look like a battleship or a submarine. You know, they don't necessarily have elevators inside a submarine or a battleship. They need to use stairs and so forth. What happens if power does get knocked out? You don't want to be stuck in an elevator ringing a bell going, oh, can you help me while we're under attack? But
Sure.
I do like this opening, this cold open the doctor says that Spock threatens him with death if he asks him how you doing one more time because he wasn't eating. And then we see the actual romance quotient of Nurse Chapel, and this is her first appearance in season 2 physically, and been a while, in fact, since What Are Little Girls Made Of? More frequently. She's like in love with Mr. Spock or obsessed with Mr. Spock. And we see
I do like that he gets like really angry at her. It's like, I'm not your person to take care of.
Yep. He
He's not having it.
That's also the introduction of the first item called Plomeek soup. A native soup that all later Treks always and consistently referred to. Anytime Vulcans eat, they only seem to eat this soup.
Oh, Vulcan Plomeek soup. And I'll bet you made it, too. You never give up hoping, do you?
But I just want to make a quick point out that kind of confrontation between Chapel and Spock is the exact opposite of Chapel and Spock in the newer Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, where they're actually very sexual with each other and having a dating relationship. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, I know. I've seen a bit of that, and a bit of their dynamic and a bit of the 90210 or I don't know, high school drama that is Strange New Worlds. And my first question to you, I think I asked you this back in like one of our first episodes. Why is Spock in a sexual relationship when he's only supposed to have sex once every 7 years?
That's because the new writers don't know. The new writers don't know what the hell they're doing. That's really what it is.
Right. They don't address it. Although, okay, listen. That being said, devil's advocate. Didn't they do the same thing in Enterprise? Wasn't T'Pol kind of have the hots for one of that Southern cornbread gentleman?
Oh yeah, for Trip. No, but there's a difference. There's a difference between that. She was affected by a virus that made her lose her self-control. So that's in a later episode of Enterprise where they come to a zombie Vulcan starship.
Wait.
Yeah, no, I'm
Hold
serious.
on. No.
Yes.
No. There was a scene, and I don't think it was that episode, where she called him to her quarters to like give her a massage.
Yes.
And it was essentially like, that was that?
Yeah, but it was before that. That's Vulcan neuropressure. Trip was having a hard time dealing with...
obviously sexual.
Well, yes, everything in Enterprise was sexual, down to the decon chamber where they're not even wearing apparently their underwear and showing off their...
No,
yes.
I love the decon chamber because here's the thing. There's like the sexy... No. There's a very cute moment in the decon chamber where they're like two people and they're sexy and they're rubbing each other down with all that grease. And then you see the captain, and he's giving his little basset hound a rub down too.
Hey.
And it reminds you, it's almost saying like, yeah, you sick pervert. You thought this was sexual? It's scientific.
Or maybe that's just what turns you on. Hey, whatever, man. And it's a beagle. But that's another story. So let's get back to our story.
Whatever.
This took 7 rewrites, but it wasn't so bad. Theodore Sturgeon, by the way, is most famous for this phrase. They asked him, why would you want to write on television? Television is and science fiction is crap. And Theodore Sturgeon famously responded with what's now known as Sturgeon's Law is 90% of science fiction is crap. But then again, 90% of everything is crap. And he actually said the word crud. But a lot of people turn that into, think Harlan Ellison said that because that seems more curmudgeonly. But that's actually Theodore Sturgeon's phrase. Theodore Sturgeon wanted to make a story about their mating rituals and people obsessed with Spock. They wrote in a third character named Maggie to fall in love with Spock, and then they just decided to get rid of that and make it Nurse Chapel. That's where we're basically at. They also spent a long time making the Klingon language, the Vulcan language, Klingon too, but not in this episode, the Vulcan language. And everyone was saying, like, this sounds really ridiculous. It says, like, Kiki Klaatu, as opposed to what you hear later in the episode. So they got rid of all that. Kalifee! Robert Justman noticed that the original name of Spock's rival, when we get to the wedding, his name was Spore. And Justman says that's a little bit too...
Why?
A little bit too on the nose for breeding purposes. Maybe change the name to something else. And so that was also changed. DC Fontana had some trouble with that. But that's basically where we are on this. But getting back into our story, just one other thing I want to point out to you is that everything with like the hand gestures and the relationship, the way they're acting, a lot of it, that was all made by Leonard Nimoy. He came up with the idea, that they are all a people based on hand gestures and touches. And you will see that in every time there's a Vulcan, there's always some sort of hand gesture or touch down to the Vulcan salute, which is actually a reverse holding of a hand from a Jewish tradition, what a Kohanim or a leader of a prayer service would do to basically have a blessing on the congregation, and he just held it up. So that's an interesting reuse of religious stuff in here, but that's basically all your sort of background things on this. But getting into our story, I love that opening scene, and I even like that where, he's like yelling at the captain, "I demand a vacation," is pretty much what he was saying. Imagine working for someone and saying that now. "I'll give you a vacation." So that was, all I need is an answer, yes or no. And then we get that conversation between Kirk and Spock's quarters, where he's confronting him.
I'm more interested in your request for shore leave. In all the years that I've known...
my request, Captain. Will you grant it or not?
In all the years that I've known you, you've never asked for a leave of any sort. In fact, you've refused them. Why now?
I thought that was very well acted. You see Spock holding, like, I don't know, some sort of blade or letter opener, barely holding on, trying not to stab his captain. I guess it's kind of...
And I can attest the stress of being a professional. Matt and I have to deal with this often, being litigators with high-volume practices where one judge says, "You have to be here tomorrow," and the other judge says, "You have to be here tomorrow." And then each judge says, "Go tell the other judge to suck an egg." And it's like, ugh. Well, yeah, this is exactly what this poor guy is dealing with, where he's like, well, my best friend and my first officer might die, and my boss is telling me there is no way you can't be here tomorrow.
Yeah, a little silly. That Altair situation, they be 3 fancy starships going over there. But this is also another thing over here. They keep changing course, and we meet our new navigator, Ensign Chekov.
Bridge, navigation.
Navigation, Chekov here.
Pavel Chekov joins the crew.
Yeah, wearing a terrible wig.
Yes, it's called the Beatles wig. They decided to make him look like the Beatles or the Monkees, because the Beatles and the Monkees are very popular at this time. The Monkees, a band made, I believe, by RCA Records, so a fake band in a sense. And they were very popular, so NBC and Desilu were trying to capitalize on that teen market. That's what that was for. It wasn't because they were trying to appease the Russians. It was trying to get the younger crowd and more women interested in watching the show. But for all that was worth, at least we get to meet him for the first time. We see he's Russian. He's plotting the course to go to Altair 6. And then he wants to know about going to Vulcan. So then they plan to go to Vulcan again. It's a lot of funny back and forth scenes at that time.
How do you figure it, Chekov? First we're going to Vulcan. Then we're going to Altair. Then we're headed to Vulcan again. Now we're headed back to Altair.
I think I'm going to get spacesick.
But as Kirk is going to Vulcan, he gets ordered, like your boss said, you got to appear at part Z at 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. You have to appear at, come back to Altair. He says, "Come on, Admiral Comac, give me a break." No. So that I thought was actually, that's a nice little comedic bit, by the way, going back and forth. I liked it. Did you like that little bit of humor between Sulu and Chekov?
Yeah, I did, and obviously it begins a long legacy, I dare say, of folks of Chekov and Sulu kind of being a little bit of frickin' frack, a little bit of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, observers and peanut galleries, commentators. Yes, I do like them quite a bit. I love those guys.
Yeah, that's the dynamic duo, if you will. They're actually they fit well, very well, and I like the fact that Chekov becomes more permanent because it's instead of having like the navigator of the week or someone of the week, it's good to see some sort of permanence among the crew. The interesting thing is that this is not his first appearance actually in Star Trek. This is the 4th episode he has filmed in. The next one, I believe, is his first appearance. Walter Koenig, who played Pavel Chekov, was hired because Hikaru Sulu, or George Takei, was in the movie The Green Berets with John Wayne. So he couldn't do both, and he couldn't get out of the Green Berets, so they needed someone on the bridge. So you'll see Chekov more. And all the lines Chekov says after a while are actually Sulu's lines. So that's an interesting thing. And on a side note, I helped move Walter Koenig's daughter into my college dorm.
You've already told that story, Captain.
I know, but I just had to say it again. Lousy tipper. Anyway, so the next thing is like, Kirk is having...
As the first officer, it's on me to maintain the dignity of my captain by ushering him away from senior moments, like repeating the same story over and over again.
Did I tell you the time I moved Walter Koenig's daughter into my dorm? Anyway.
Yeah, or the time that Jonathan Frakes yelled at you, or that you worked for Majel Barrett?
Hey, those are great stories. Did I tell you about the time I helped Cole Meany find his hotel room when he was drunk off his ass?
That is my favorite story, actually.
That could come later. But these are all true stories. Much like our L&T stories, they all sound crazy. That's landlord-tenant law. As much as crazy as they sound, they're all true. That's the thing about litigation. You can't believe it until you actually see it. But law aside, we get now to our next part where Kirk is having second thoughts. He's going to Altair. He asks Chekov, you know what? Let's go head back to Vulcan. And Chekov goes, what do you mean? We're already on our way back to Vulcan. He goes, oh, yeah? Who told you that? Well, Mr. Spock did. And that's where Kirk says, I need you to get to sickbay. And Spock is really having a horrible time. Again, Nimoy does a fantastic job of showing grace under pressure, at least to me. He's like losing his temper kind of at his captain, but not really. And this is also where we hear that first guitar strum, not like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure guitar strum. This like brooding, dark guitar sound as he's walking through the hallways is designed to show pain. It was actually very well designed, that musical notes. What did you think at least of the musical notes in that?
I thought the music was out of sight in this episode. And again, we can get into it now. I can already tell. Okay, so the first season, there were episodes that were very good, but you could tell that it was kind of like fleeting. Like it was just kind of a broken clock being right twice a day, where the writing was a bit of a miss and it was a bit clunky, but it happened to be hit the right groove and feel like modern Trek. And this, I don't know, I get this vibe where they found their footing. It took an entire first season of hits and misses, and first episode out the bat, first episode of the second season, it feels like the ensemble is there, the plot is there, the high sci-fi concept is there, the stakes are there. It felt like a real good old-fashioned TNG DS9 A+ Voyager episode. Although, where the hell's Scotty?
Oh, that's a good point. Scotty's like, he's down in engineering hanging out. We have Lieutenant Leslie at the engineering station. But, where is Scotty? I guess he had off that week. He's actually one of the only ones not in there. We even have Lieutenant Uhura, Chekov, Sulu. I guess, you got a lot of people in here. This is actually an expensive episode. We'll come to that in a minute. When we find out that Spock is dying, right before that, we see Nimoy shaking his hand like he can't control himself. Again, these little subtle things he's doing are fabulous. But I agree with you 100%. They really hit it on the mark here on the acting and the story. You also see the relationship Kirk has with Spock and McCoy, and the friendship between that triumvirate that's there. There's a sense of mutual respect and concern all the way through. Kirk's willing to throw his career away to save his best friend or his friend. And, McCoy's concerned, too. I don't know if he'd throw away his drop of the true for Spock, but, he is concerned. And he even shows it during the tests that they were giving him, like, oh, my God, he's going to die. I can't figure out why. But that's something that is so well conveyed here, and the way that Shatner, Kelly, and Nimoy all act off each other, that it's amazing to see them. It's perfect. You actually believe, again, there are 3 service members serving with each other that have known each other for a long time. It's fascinating. Then we get to the next scene I think I'd like to just mention is like where Kirk and Spock actually talk, and we learn about the biology of Vulcans. That entire scene, again, we changed music slightly. We hear the Vulcan procession music, which is designed to be disturbing with that dun 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 sound. This is all written by a guy named Gerald Fried. He actually made the music for this one, and the guitar was a jazz musician, Barney Kessel. So it's called the Vulcan March, but the guitar sounds in the beginning, that is known as Spock's theme. You will hear it repeatedly in other episodes. There's also a more famous fight music, and then the fight music, which we're coming up to rather rapidly. One of the things that you've noticed as well is that this does not feel too short as you're watching it.
No, so much happens in this episode.
Yeah, so many things.
It could have just been an honestly like lesser Trek, like one of the poor written episodes from the first season. They would have spent the entire episode on the ship.
Yes.
And at the very end, McCoy would have figured out some sort of drug cocktail to put it aside, like to negate the Pon farr. Mm-hmm. But no, man, they went all the way. And the great thing is, the first half of the episode is very much on the Enterprise, faced with a mystery that's slowly escalating. And then the second is on an alien planet, seeing an alien ritual, brand spanking new, really, really swinging with the fences and making plot elements that talk about, echoes of future Trek are going to be seen throughout all the rest of the series whenever you hear of a Vulcan.
Yeah, it's 7 years. Every 7 years they mate. Kind of a dull place, though. That's, again, something different from Strange New Worlds. Even the Vulcans in Strange New Worlds are, like, all over each other. It's really ridiculous. There's a point I want to come to. We'll talk about that. But I just want to point out one smaller piece on this, is that they redid the sets in, let's say, Spock's quarters. Spock's and Kirk's quarters are actually technically the same room, but they wanted to make Spock's quarters stand out a little bit more by having like a dark and broody section with red curtains everywhere. I loved his
quarters.
Yeah, and the statues. Yeah, it's really, and then you can see the difference between his and Kirk's quarters, as Kirk's has got like more naval things. Spock has like all this strange alien artifacts and even weapons too. Like there's an axe in there, and besides that, and also his loot, all those things. Weird statue.
Love that. Mm-hmm. Sorry to interrupt. I was just saying, I love that. I've always loved that the Vulcans, while being portrayed as logical, were never portrayed as pacifists. They understand that sometimes violence must meet violence. They were not Zen Buddhists or anything.
Right. They had a very violent past. That's more explored in Enterprise. It's also explored in one of my number 2 episode from the top 5, Balance of Terror. Spock mentions they had a martial period, a violent expansionist period, just as bad, if not worse, from Earth's wars. In Enterprise, they explain it towards the end of season 4, actually pretty well, I thought. But they almost destroyed themselves until they found logic. But over here, we find out that not everything is logical. Kirk asks him, or Spock says, I bet you how you guess how we get our women. And he goes like, we assumed it was logical, and it's not. It's an arranged marriage, and every 7 years they have this fever that they have to work through that they just can't control. Whether that's suppressed emotion on top of biological that makes it extra violent, it's not exactly clear. But I do love the fact that we have made up things here, like McCoy says that Spock won't tell him what's wrong. He's tighter than an Aldebaran shell mouth, as opposed to saying tighter as a clam. And Spock talks about like weird creatures that mate once every 11 years and says to salmon, that's the typical Star Trek thing. Say two fake things and one real. So salmon is
Sure.
real. You know, so I always think that's hilarious.
I
But
mean,
that's-
I personally would love to see a bird eel, but
Yeah.
still.
I was like Aldebaran shellmouth. I'm like, where do you buy one of those? Is that at
Yeah,
Petco?
that's right.
Anyway, let's just to jump ahead a little bit. The thing that I find we're infuriating with New Trek is where we're coming up to. Everyone's on the bridge. They get to Vulcan. Space Central of Vulcan contacts the Enterprise and says, "Is Spock coming to be there?" I'm thinking like, geez, at least take it private. But nope. They show him his future wife, who's played by Arlene Tasha Martell. She looks very attractive, by the way. She thought she looked pretty hot. She said, "I think I looked really good in those ears." She said, but there's this phrase that she says about how they're going to meet each other at the appointed place. I'll probably put in that quote here.
We meet at the appointed place.
Spock parted from me and never parted. Never and always touching and touched. I await you.
But Strange New Worlds uses that for everything. So those of you who decide to watch Strange New Worlds, they pretty much mock this entire set where they tried to meet. Spock says, parted and apart, together and not together, and I'll meet you at our appointed place. That has some sort of somber and heavy ceremonial meaning over there. In Strange New Worlds, they use it as a punchline where T'Pring, that's his wife's name, says something like, "Okay, why don't you go pick up a quart of milk and I'll meet you at the appointed place." And I'm like, when you kind of make fun of this, you lessen the story overall. So I'm just pointing out, those of you who decide to watch Strange New Worlds, you're going to see a marked difference in not only writing quality, but they make fun of this in some ways. They try and make it a joke, and I just can't stand that. So sorry for denigrating Strange New Worlds out there, everyone, but
No,
just
you're
had to get
not,
that in.
nor should you be.
Now I hate it. So, and I still hate that singing one that you are so in love with. That
Oh man,
Buffy
I love Subspace Rhapsody. Oof.
Buffy the Vampire meets Star Trek. Not everything is Buffy. I'm sorry.
I love the Buffy the Vampire. No, get out of here, man. I enjoy high
Not
concept
everything is
episodes.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer XO.
I enjoy one thing I also always enjoyed. I've told you this before. I enjoy high concept episodes. Apparently it's fun to make fun of, but what was it? Starship Mine, when it was Die Hard in space.
Yes.
I love that episode. People shit on that episode all the time.
They're not
What's wrong with that?
singing. They're not singing. Didn't you learn
But it
anything?
doesn't matter.
It does matter.
I love Phantasms, or what, where it's like a horror movie and Data's having like terrifying nightmares.
Are they singing?
No, but whatever. The point is, I like it when there are genres that are being overlapped. That's all.
No, I understand. The singing ones, they should all be burned. But in Buffy, it makes more sense because that's more of a comedy to begin with. It doesn't make sense in Star Trek because it's not supposed to be a comedy. It can have comedic moments in it, but anyway, getting down
I'm
to...
going to bring Captain to karaoke and see what he does then.
Well, I'll sing there. I'll sing, "Sweet Child of Mine." It won't bother me.
God, gross.
I'll sing whatever,
You can tell
man.
there's a generational difference here.
We can sing songs from Erasure. I don't know. You want me to sing something by Lady Gaga? I'll do that as well. It doesn't really matter. Besides, when you go to karaoke, you're not supposed to be sober anyway. One of the things that's nice in the enhanced version now is when they do get to the planet, you get to see a couple of things that are different that you didn't see before. You do see the walkway up to the ceremonial place, but even before that, you see a city in the background, which is the city that Spock comes from. And that city actually is from the animated series. Eventually, when we get to the animated series stories over there, there's one where Spock goes back in time, but I'm not going to mention it much further than that. And we see a Vulcan city of the past, which happens to be the city that's in the background of this. That's kind of neat. We get down to the ceremonial Stonehenge kind of area. I really like this set. I know it's a red wall in the background, but it really gives an alien feel. What did you think of that entire set there?
I mean, typical TOS. Obviously a set with a fake matte sky. Also, not bad. And again, I'm not even paying attention to the set. I'm looking at the people. I'm looking at the characters and the costumes. And I really like, honestly, these costumes look less ridiculous than the costumes at the end of Search for Spock. So Vulcan is looking a lot better here, a lot more serious than the weird kind of, what were those half moon hats that the Vulcan engineers wore? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's I don't like those either. I was like, what are they? Well, they repair things, and they also are like short order cooks in a diner afterwards. I don't understand what that is. But in this, I love that entire bit, and I think the set's fabulous because it makes it look bigger than it actually is. And then you see this wedding procession come with the bells and the noise, and they come on in, and we have that music again, that plodding music as this entire crowd comes in, and we see the standard bearers of Spock's family, and we see and are introduced to T'Pau, the only woman who turned down a seat on the Federation Council. So she's a superior or high leader in Vulcan, and Kirk and McCoy are saying like, geez, I didn't know that Spock was so important. Oh, just a quick step back. It's nice to see that Spock invites his friends down, and he specifically asks for Kirk and McCoy. That I thought was very well done. He definitely invites Kirk, and then he's thinking about it. Yeah, you too, McCoy, even though you insult me. I think that's actually pretty good. So it really shows a true friendship between all three characters. But,
sure.
And we see T'Pau, who is played by, I believe I said her name already, Celia Lovsky. She could not do the Vulcan salute, by the way. So every scene you see her, before she does it, it's like mid-chest up because she has to use her hands to separate her fingers to make that symbol. So that's just something that she just couldn't do. She was famous in Germany. Her family escaped Nazi occupation. She was actually originally married to Peter Lorre. You know Peter Lorre. So
of course.
That was at the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and what's the other one?
No, he wasn't.
No, not Doctor. What's the other one? It's the M movie. I can't
M.
remember. M.
It's called M.
M. There we go. Well, it was close.
Casablanca.
Heidmurich. Anyway.
Also The Raven.
Yes, he's in a lot of good stuff.
Okay.
So, there we go. We get to our first thing, and we find out that T'Pring doesn't want to get married to Spock. She challenges him to a duel. And we see Stonn, not Spore. Stonn is actually the Romulan who was in Balance of Terror, the guy who was challenging his commander.
Yes, Mark Leonard.
Yep. But the character's name is Lawrence Montaigne. He's also in The Great Escape. What's really funny is a quick aside to this, in this episode, this actually they moved it to Friday nights, and Lawrence Montaigne was in this, Amok Time, but also The Great Escape was on at the same time. So he was all across TV at the time.
Good for him.
Good for him. But
working actor.
There you go. We get to find out that you have to ask yourself, did she like Spock? And the answer is probably not really. In Strange New Worlds, they're like hot and heavy all over each other, and she's suddenly having an affair with Stonn, sort of. But in this, she challenges Spock to fight for her. Kalifee, she screams. Some of the words that are left over. And she chooses Captain Kirk as her champion. A breach of protocol, to be sure. So then we get our world-famous fight between Kirk and Spock, and that fight music that we all love. Do you know the fight music by heart, Mike?
You understand why I know that by heart, right?
We live it every day.
Yes. No. Oh, yeah, well, you and I are two best friends forced to do battle often by the clients who are paying our bills. Cable Guy.
Yes, that's actually hilarious. In Cable Guy, there's a reference where Jim Carrey fights, I think it's Matthew Broderick, and they actually redo this scene. It's actually really funny. Kirk and Spock are now faced in Mortal Kombat with these giant spears, those alien-looking spears. Those are...
Yeah, good weapon design. I really also enjoyed ultimately, I'm skipping ahead to the outcome. I enjoyed the solution, that it wasn't a cop-out, where it's not like, well, it was supposed to be a fight to the death, but then at the last second the judge says, no, you've proven it, you can stop. No, it was like, nope, yep, he killed him.
Yep.
He technically killed him.
He
and
sure
he technically
did.
died. And but for the genius of Dr. McCoy kind of doing some 4D chess to save his two best friends' lives, one of them would have died.
Yeah, that's true. Because Kirk is having trouble breathing because the air is thinner and it's hot, not like New York City in August hot, but hotter, which I can't even imagine. He says to T'Pau, "Can I give him something to help him breathe?" And T'Pau says, "The air is the air." But she gives him. McCoy gives Kirk what he says is a tri-ox compound, a made-up oxygen derivative or something to help Kirk breathe. But it wasn't at all. It was a neural paralyzer. So when Spock thinks he's killing the captain, he could say he's dead, and it actually ends the blood rage between Spock and Kirk, and also ends Spock's desire to combat, to fight for his woman T'Pring. I think that entire little bit was awesome, actually. It was a good subterfuge by McCoy. And again, you're right, the costumes look fantastic in all of them. Just as a note on the costumes, Bill Theiss made all these. He always made all the costumes. Held together by wire. Martell said she hated her costume, that's T'Pring, because at the end of shooting she was bleeding every day due to the wires underneath.
God damn.
Because it was so tight. But she's a good-looking woman, T'Pring. I think she's very attractive as a Vulcan.
Very handsome woman. No, she's a good-looking woman.
Yeah, she really is. So we don't have to go through each moment of fighting with the music. And we have the spears, and we have this weird, like, yo-yo-like object, the Anrun, and to fight each other.
And we get some gratuitous stunt doubles in here.
Actually, they did most of that stuff themselves, believe it or not.
Nah, I could tell in the far away shots where they're swinging around that spear thing. There was Spot. I mean, Kirk had black hair.
No, I do like the fact that his shirt gets ripped, and I keep thinking of Galaxy Quest, of like where Alan Rickman says, "Hey, you got your shirt off." That was fun, funny, but I thought that was well acted by Shatner, where he's like out of breath and he can't actually keep up with Spock. I mean, he does hold his own for a while, but it's a weird ceremony.
I don't know what he thought it was going to be doing, because I mean, he must have known that. Well, I don't know if it's established at this point that Vulcans are twice as strong as human beings.
Yes.
3 times.
Yeah, something like that. 3
stronger
times
than a human, not as strong as a Klingon.
But they can act. Humans can hold their own. We're crafty apparently, and we work out. So that's what happens. I do at the end where McCoy says, he's dead, and he says, "As weird as this sounds, you're in command now, Mr. Spock," and I guess that's quite true. And that's where we have our final confrontation between his soon-to-be wife or not wife, and we have some of the best writing ever. I think the way when Spock asks T'Pring, "Why'd you do that?" and she says very logically why. If, I challenged you and you lost, Kirk wouldn't want me, so I'd be free and I'd have Stonn. If you win, then you might you'd be gone and I'd have Stonn. That entire logic bit, I'll put in that quote here. It's one of the best lines.
If your captain were Victor, he would not want me, and so I would have Stonn. If you were Victor, you would free me because I had dared to challenge, and again I would have Stonn. But if you did not free me, it would be the same, for you would be gone, and I would have your name and your property, and Stonn would still be there.
Logical. Flawlessly logical.
I am honored.
And then Spock says something, and I'm going to add an interesting note to it. They cut out the line where Spock says to Stonn, "You might find that
having is not as satisfying as wanting."
They actually cut that line out. And Theodore Sturgeon screamed and yelled, and they cut it back in on the same day. When they were doing the finals on this, they actually run back to editing to recut it back in. Can you imagine not having that in there? It's kind of crazy. That last line,
Managed to sneak it right in.
Yeah, they snuck it back in. They just get it off the floor and glue it back in. So that's pretty much it. They get back. T'Pau says, "Live long and prosper," and Spock says, "I shall do neither." And we go back to the ship, and that's where we have our neat little comedic story over here. where Spock goes to sickbay and says, listen, I'm resigning immediately. Make whatever arrangements you can, and I'm going to go tell Scotty. And then we have that very funny comedic bit where Kirk comes out in the back and says, don't you think you should check with me? And we see Spock lose his entire veneer. I think this entire little bit is, to me, the highlight of the episode, although it's comedic.
And of course, nailing what I always talk about, that Leonard Nimoy knew that Vulcans were not beings without emotions. They were beings that chose to not express their emotions. Accordingly, here we are. We're in a situation where their veneer can crack. It's not like they're incapable of it.
That's true.
It's not something that they like to do.
Right. Well, that's the end of this episode. They all move merrily along their way. I mean, I have some questions. Does that mean that Spock is really suppressed for the rest of Star Trek? He just doesn't know interest in mating or sex. There was a theory that he had sex with Saavik in Star Trek 3. She was actually supposed to be pregnant in Star Trek 4, but they cut that out.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's a little weird. Also, Saavik is also supposed to be in Star Trek 6 as opposed to
Valeris.
Valeris, that's correct. So, but
yes.
But I really like this episode. I mean, to me, this is I'm always happy to watch it. It's interesting. The characters all act what you expect them to do. They've kind of fallen into their own.
Oh, yes.
To me, it always.
And not only that, ultimately, sorry, go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I was just saying that it just makes me feel good to watch this episode. This is one of the ones, like I said, I could always turn on Balance of Terror and enjoy and relax. I can watch this one, enjoy and relax. It's not like saying, "Oh, Alternative Factor is on," or it's not a terrible. It's an awesome episode. It explains more of the Vulcan society. We see that Spock has a family or emotions and so forth that have been repressed. We see a lot more development between our main characters, and we even get to see a little bit of our secondary characters, although very little bit, between Chapel and Sulu and Chekov, and you can see the emotion carry through with Nichelle Nichols' Uhura as well. So it's actually all one happy little bit, and I really enjoyed this entire story. There's nothing in this that I actually don't like. I can't really even say I don't have a WTF moment in this for me, but that's how I feel at it. And I'm not giving it my rating yet because I'm curious to what you will give it to as well. But what do you think of this overall?
I thought it was really good, and I was very impressed that in what could have just been an episode of like, it's going to be the Vulcan sex episode, it was basically anything but that. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the catalyst. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the episode was really about diplomacy. It was a diplomacy episode more than anything. It was about Kirk and company trying to navigate the very subtle and fragile cultural elements of someone else's society, and it had the added tension that society belonged to their best friend Spock. Mm-hmm. So, on the one hand, Kirk is tackling this as a Starfleet officer who's also essentially a de facto ambassador in these situations, and also trying to figure out a way to make sure that his friend is not suffering. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. It didn't blow me away in terms of any sort of like high sci-fi concepts. I didn't think that it was that entertaining, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
It was good. It was a good episode. It was above average. My rating is 7 out of 10.
Oh, 7 out of 10.
Sorry.
Well, that's okay. So Mike gives it a 7 out of 10. I was just going to tell you how much it cost. I actually give this 8 to 9 out of 10. I'm more leaning toward 9. I like the entire adventure. I like that we find out more about Spock. For me, it does not have to be high concept all the time, but I do like the kind of the delving into the background characters. I like the fact that you see the friendship more. I've already said that. So for me, I'm actually going to uprate it. I'm saying it's a 9 out of 10. For me, it's a strong start to season 2. Season 2 has its ups and downs. Trust me, a lot of them. But this, as a premiere episode for season 2, was fabulous. And let's, so I'm a 9, Mike's a 7. Let's talk about how much this costs. Since you wanted to guess last time, go ahead.
Lot.
How much? Yes, it cost a lot. How much do you think it
Got it,
cost?
okay.
$1967.
Considering that we're on the spaceship and we've got a full complement of crew except for Scotty, and then we are on a planet and we got a full complement there. It's not just stumbling around a bunch of rocks. We got a whole bunch of people in full costume. We have guest stars. We have stunts. I'm going to guess $205,000.
Wow, actually pretty close. It's $200,906, which is $20,000 more than Desilu wanted to spend. So in 2024 dollars, this episode cost $1,889,809.66. And the over a budget amount, which was $20,906, is actually the equivalent of going over budget by almost $200,000. Quite a princely sum. $196,650.97 is your cash
Check,
register.
please.
But still, that's it's still a lot of money between the sets, the costumes, the extras, like you said, special effects too. I mean, minor as they are, there are special effects beaming down. You do have the set itself. Matt Jeffries had to work from scratch to build every prop and item in here. They couldn't go to a house, I'm saying a prop house, and buy these. So the swords, the on-runes as well, the yo-yo-like weapons, everything there that was built from scratch. I think it's fabulous and fantastic to see that. So that is pretty amazing to me. So that's really where it is. I do want to also point out, I said I'd mention a letter to you. There was a bunch of women writing into Star Trek saying, we don't want Spock to have like a female companion because he's pretty much all very attractive, and we want to pretty much fantasize about him, is pretty much what they were saying. I thought that was pretty funny. They go, "Dear sirs, it's reported that you're looking for a Vulcanian girl for Star Trek. Too many Vulcanians spoil the program. Please leave Spock as the only Vulcanian, because even though Spock has no emotions, you never know with a Vulcanian girl around. So don't get one, because I'm afraid I agree with all my friends. If we can't have our Spock to ourselves, we'll burn the channel. Selfish but true." So
Wow.
it's like, so they actually responded saying, like, "We thank you for your letter of concern. There is no plans for Mr. Spock to permanently have a Vulcan girl at his side. We do, however, plan to visit the Vulcan planet next year. We hope you and your friends will continue to watch Star Trek, etc." And that was from Gene Roddenberry. But there's a lot of fan fiction about Spock. There's also a lot of fan fiction, the KS stories, or slash fiction, as you like to call it. Slash fiction actually got its major start from Star Trek, but it's a little bizarre how much people liked Leonard Nimoy more than William Shatner's Kirk. But I think it's just because he's a different type of character. A lot of people also like Joe Pevney, who was our star director. He did a really tight job on this, as per usual. I think it's very well directed, well acted. The music's fabulous. Well, there we go. That's the end of this episode. So Spock doesn't get married. And that's the end of this episode. We're going to be going up to our next episode after this, which is Who Mourns for Adonias. Well,
Who mourns for Mern?
yeah, Who Mourns for Mern? No,
Who mourns for Morn?
No, Who Mourns for Adonias? It's an interesting episode. I'm curious to hear from that. You can hear my hesitancy already in my voice. That's our next episode coming up at Yelling at Gaseous Anomalies. Anything else you want to add about this episode, though, Mike?
Nope. I'm excited to see where this goes. Everyone has told me the internet tells me that season 2 is not nearly as good as season 1, but judging from the first episode, they're proving the cynics wrong, because this was a fine episode and hell of a lot better and a lot of more professionally done than a lot of stuff from season 1. So cautiously optimistic, Captain.
We shall see. Yes, no, you'll have a good time. There, like I said, there's highs and lows. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. Just wanted to say, as always, if you like what we're doing here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you want to email us, you can email us at yellingatgas@gmail.com. Don't forget, or you can email us on all your podcasters out there, podcatchers, or contact us that way, either through Podbean or whatever. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode of Yelling at Gaseous Anomalies. Don't forget also to stop by at our public tea shop store, and get a nice t-shirt. And support the channel. Get some nice merch. Anything else you want to add?
Please.
Yeah, we got to pay for college for my exo's newborn and my kids too, and things like that. So feel free to buy a T-shirt, buy a cup, something, anything. No, just kidding. You can do whatever you like, but the T-shirts.
I need the money. We play the ponies. Captain and I love to hit the track together. Our wives are very upset.
It's okay.
Please.
15 will get you 20. We'll win one day. But
oh, one day, yeah. That's the thing. If we keep on betting higher amounts, when we win, it'll all be fine.
Just remember, the lottery is a tax on the foolish, so only enter after 20 million of whatever amount of money, whether it's dollars, rupees, or what have you. So
I never play the lotto.
Anyway, but that's pretty much about it. Anything else you want to add to this besides that you like pretending to play at the track, Mike?
Nope. Thank you as always, Captain. Appreciate you being my steward on this guide through Trek. And, I love that this is still kind of the beginning of a many years long journey. So let's see. And then, of course, in 10 years when we hit the last of Trek and we're all burnt out, actually, by then there'll be even more Trek if we're going to do Lower Decks. And we got Lower Decks. We got Strange New Worlds. We got Section 31.
God, I hope
we
not.
got Starfleet Academy. We're going to do it all.
Well, we can do it all, but I don't know if we will be alive to last through it all. I'll tell you that much. Lower Decks, by the way, is a lot of fun, but it should be called Reference-A-Rama because it pretty much, unless you've seen every episode of Star Trek to date, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things from TOS in it, a lot of things in TNG, etc. But anyway, it's my pleasure to take you on this journey, and it's an honor to have you along with me as well to share the fandom on it. And it's also great to have all of you listening into us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Again, who mourns for Adonais? We'll see you next time on Yelling at Gaseous Anomalies. Live long and prosper, and see you out there.
Of course, Mr. Spock. Your reaction was quite logical.
Thank you, Doctor.
And a pig's eye.